Joining me today is Professor Wayne Lesperance, Professor of Political Science at New England College. Wayne, I want to talk about the other Republicans. What are the key things that we saw in this primary that may have surprised some people, or takeaways that we had to think about? I'm thinking about Kasich's success. Will that translate? I'm thinking about Rubio, which looked like he had a ton of momentum, and then the fall. And the players who there was a little bit of a winnowing process.
Sure.
Going forward, and also Cruz. He did well, I understand, with evangelicals, but Trump did well with evangelicals. How does the campaign play out for him, and who's got this organizational structure? And I just laid out like 20 different questions there. So pick one up and we'll go from there.
So let's see if we can work through this. I think Kasich was a bit of surprise the way as well as he did in New Hampshire. And there is a big question as to whether he can take that forward. What Kasich did very well was his 106 town hall meetings in New Hampshire, by far the most.
He was the most retail.
Most retail. He went all in New Hampshire, didn't spend much time in Iowa. So, it was New Hampshire a bust for him, and New Hampshire rewarded him.
Is that a good strategy going forward for anybody? Forget this. The skipping Iowa and putting all your marbles in New Hampshire, is that really a good tactical strategy?
Ideally, you want a candidate that can play in all 50 states, right? But there are certain realities, whether it's money, whether it's organization, whether it's just you're not going to match up well. So I think for Kasich, this was the smart play. I wouldn't recommend that for a Trump or somebody else who can play in all 50 states, but that makes sense for him. The problem is that he had 106 town halls to make the sale. Right, he's not going to have that opportunity anywhere else in the country. You
couldn't have enough town hall. There's not enough hours in the day between now and the next voting.
So how much of a message can he get out in the amount of time that he has, and that's a question. He's really kind of the tortoise and the hare. He's sort of slow moving, but he kept making progress and eventually pulled out second place. The race is much shorter. We're not in a marathon, we're in a sprint now, and I don't know that he has the time to make that sale. So it's those folks who can have a big impact early on. Cruz. I think Cruz brings with him a lot of strength, particularly in a state like South Carolina, because of his connection to evangelicals. He's a son of a preacher. He has that sort of language, and the way he speaks really harkens back to somebody who's at the pulpit. I think he'll play very well in South Carolina. In fact, I think he could be the winner of South Carolina. But we'll see. I mean, Trump is also going to be formidable down there because he doesn't do anything small. And Jeb Bush was polling well 3 weeks ago when they did their last polls in South Carolina. So I think probably the big story is Rubio. Rubio came with a little bit of momentum out of Iowa, and if Chris Christie is remembered for anything from this cycle, it's going to be for absolutely just stomping Rubio in a debate, and that became the story.
And that didn't gain Christie votes.
It didn't gain Christie votes, but it lost Rubio votes.
So somebody else owes Christie a favor.
I think John Kasich ought to buy him dinner or something,
okay.
Right? Yes. Rubio came out of Iowa very strong, I thought, with a lot of the big momentum people talk about. That debate really became, and when we look at the exit polling data, I think it's something like a third of the voters who made up their mind right before the election, said that they were heavily influenced by the debate. So, read into that what you will. I think Senator Rubio would really like to have that debate back again.
Who's going to be, if the outsiders are Cruz and Trump, who is the establishment Republican? Kasich, Bush, and I don't know if Rubio would fit into that, but
I'd put him in there. Usually we talk about the governors and the senator, right? So Christie's out, so it's Kasich, Bush, and Rubio. Boy, John, if I had an answer to that question, I'd be a very rich man.
Okay.
We don't know. I mean, you have Cruz do well in Iowa, Kasich does well in New Hampshire.
Will Bush's money outlast the others?
Bush's money will keep him in for as long as he wants to stay in, right? But I suspect when we get to Florida, there will be a real coming home, in a sense that they have to make a decision.
Will Rubio stay into Florida?
Yes, no question. Rubio's got the resources and he's got people behind him that'll push him. They want that matchup. They want to see Rubio versus Bush in Florida and see what happens with that.
If Kasich doesn't finish in the top 4 in South Carolina, is that it?
I don't know if that's it, but it certainly becomes very hard to go on. I mean, this is really one of those deals where every race matters a ton. That's why Christie gets out. If Christie had gotten over 10%, he could have made an argument to stay in, but he got to 7 or 8%. Didn't get there. Jim Gilmore is still floating around out there, and I suspect Jim will stay till the Virginia primary on March the 1st, and after that, probably call it a day. But every one of these contests becomes really important. You have to have some claim, particularly for those guys in the middle, because they all want to vie for the title of the mantle or the mantle of the establishment candidate. Right now, there's not a clear person for that. So right now, we're all hearing it's going to be Kasich. Let's all rally around Kasich. But that's because he just won. If he loses or he doesn't place well in South Carolina, then we start the conversation all over again.
And the voters will decide.
The voters will decide.
When we return, we're going to continue our conversation about the primary results, so please stay with us.